All right. This is now going to supply and demand of our fossil fuels. So much like we talked about with mining, there are resources and reserves. Resources are just kind of the concept or what you expect. We can use this. There's probably this much out there. It can be discovered and undiscovered. We have reason to believe, given these circumstances, there's usually this much kind of thing. And reserves are what we actually know is there and is currently recoverable economically with our existing technology. So even if we know it's there, but our current technology, we can't get it. Or if it's like, well, we know it's there, but if we were to, drill and try to get it, we'd lose money. Those aren't considered reserves. Those would be put into resources. Here's just a chart of proven reserves by country. You can see the Middle East definitely has a lot more of the crude oil, also more of the natural gas, although with natural gas, it's kind of split up into more what they're calling independent states. Um, and then we have a significant amount of crude oil in North and South America, not so much in natural gas. We have a lot less. So the oil industry measures its volume of product in barrels, and a barrel is 42 US gallons. And currently, we have in our remaining reserves, we have 1.73 trillion barrels. However, we have already used 500 billion barrels, and we have been using about 35 billion barrels every year. So eventually, without new technology or new discoveries, like we will eventually run out. I haven't done the math. If you would like to, you are welcome to do the math on that. Um, and then most oil is consumed by the highly industrial countries. Let's see, this is US chart here of total consumption and our production. We've kind of caught up in the lab. Let me look. I gotta move my little zoom thing here so I can see the scale there on the bottom. Um, yeah, really recently, that's about 2020, kind of caught up in our production and our consumption. You can see the difference has been made up in imports. It's kind of common sense. If we're not making enough, where else are we going to get it? We're obviously burning it. We're not just going without. And this is how much we've been exporting. And so you can see the export has been ticking up with this production uptick since early 2000s. This is just a little chart of our strategic petroleum reserve. It's kind of like the U.S. Bank of oil, just in case, war breaks out and we can't trade with other people, how much we have. You can see it looks like it was kind of well funded at the beginning, and been more or less stagnant in funding more recently, with actually a slight, or we've been taking it out. I don't know. This book obviously is not published this year, so I don't know if this is the case like to this date. And this doesn't have a date. A lot of these say 2021, so this is probably up to like 2021 or 2022 too. But or 2022 as well. But this isn't necessarily because like we're running out of oil. This is more politically driven. So, okay, oil sands. So really oil sands are just oil that you find in sands and not like deep in the ground in rock. So that's just the case. And where I came from, in the Central Valley, California, where I worked on these, um, it's just basin filled. It's kind of like, how I said it would migrate all the way up to the top unless it's trapped. It just hasn't really been trapped before it gets into the sediments that are so young that these sediments haven't been buried and lithified and turned into rock yet. And so they're very shallow, and with the shallow, bacteria can eat the oil, and it makes it a very like heavy tar-like oil. Also comes with a lot of H2S as well. But very shallow, very thick oil, as you can see here. These are very common in Canada, Venezuela, and in California. Um, So this dark, heavy, thick oil, I call it bitumen. Um, and then you can heat it up. So we would heat it up, or we would put steam in the ground um, to get it to flow. It took a lot of, you heat it up and it turns into a liquid, just like all sorts of other things. Um, so it doesn't have to be mined, but if it's shallow enough, that's definitely the most economical way to do it. And if it's shallow enough, you can't put the steam in the ground either, because then you're going to get steam just coming up to the surface, and then that's like very dangerous. So you don't want that. And if those are the cases, then yes, you do need to mine it. Um, So then, yes, it can be refined into various fuels as well as used in asphalt. A lot of our exports actually are these kind of heavier oils. We have more heavy oil than light oil in the country, and it's almost like a little kind of trade where the Middle East has a lot of light oil, but not so much the heavy stuff. But like they still want asphalt for their roads and stuff, right? And so there's some of that export and import isn't just based on volume, but kind of just types too. The different types of oil are used for different products. Here's a map showing pipelines. You can see there's parts of the country that really aren't connected to the rest of the country. Very interesting. Again, a lot of that's politically driven. So, coming from California, very dependent on freight, trucking, and then of course like the ships too. So at least they're close to ships. So I think that helps. This is showing so the different pipelines, the refineries, and then a lot of that, from Canada coming down into here getting refined. A little bit being exported through the Gulf. Um, all right, so, and I guess I should say, like with the oil sands, and now we're talking natural gas, and why this is in supply and demand is because as our demand has gone up, we started looking at what we consider unconventional resources. And these are things that like take a little bit more money and effort to produce. It's not your like traditional light oil. It's just going to flow when we drill it. Nice, perfect reservoir kind of situation like we showed with the last lecture. Um, and so people are getting a little bit more creative, and then the cost of gas and oil has gone up, so they can afford to do kind of some of the more expensive ways of coming after that. And it's like the mining with the oil sands. And then you start looking at other products too, like, hey, well, natural gas. So if you've driven around some oil fields out here, especially like Illinois, if you've been in southern Illinois, you see all these flares and they're just burning off the natural gas that's in that oil field that they're producing the oil out of. But you can use that natural gas, and so it does come into like economics. Can we collect it and use it either within our production or maybe sell it, give it to, an energy company or something. But as the economics and the supply and demand have changed, it's slowly starting to become more valuable than just burning it. So now we have 34% of the energy in the US is from natural gas, and that's about 29 trillion cubic feet consumed most years. So they don't use barrels, they use cubic feet. 473 trillion cubic feet of proven reserves are found each year. Coal bed methane. Oh, and then there's methane in coal beds too, that we can now extract and use that. What is it? Shale gas and shale oil. And so this is a fracking, and this is kind of like going after that source rock, like where it's very fine grained and you have all that hydrocarbon, um, and it's already kind of been cooked, but it hasn't really left that source rock yet. Um, then now we have the technology to go after it. And how we do that when it's impermeable is we frack it. And so here's this example. So we directionally drill into the reservoir, and then you put very pressurized water into the reservoir to create pathways. You're increasing the permeability. So you force it to crack open with the high water, and then it will start flowing through these cracks. And then if you want to keep the crack open, we put sand in it. And sometimes it's not just sand, it's like, you know, I don't, they like, make stuff to put in the sand to make it work better. But we put sand in it to kind of keep that crack held open to help it flow. And that is what fracking is. Yeah, I use that for oil and natural gas, tight formation. So tight formation is like, low permeability. And you can't access it through traditional drilling methods because of the low permeability. So here's a map just showing the shale plays. A play is pretty much just a reservoir. This is where it is. We call it plays. I don't know why. So you can see where those are located. Probably some of the more famous one you might have heard of, New Albany, the Bakken, Eagle Ford. I don't know, maybe you've heard of some of these. Enhanced oil recovery. This is kind of like what I was talking about, how we would use steam and we would put steam into the reservoir to increase or no, to decrease the viscosity of the oil, make it flow a little bit better. Um, so that's one method used for enhanced oil recovery, EOR techniques. And so here's just saying primary. So if you drill a well and you start pumping, everything that comes out, that's considered primary production. But what that does, even if it's a real light oil that likes to flow, it leaves some behind. The oil will kind of stick to the grains. Um, Water can maybe get in the way where then you start producing just water if water flows in. And so you've left all this other oil back here because now you have this nice channel of water and water's just flowing. Remember, there's groundwater in here too. Um, and so we call this residual oil, and that can be left in there. And then what I used to work with, where it was very heavy oil, shoot, practically nothing would flow under primary. So then secondary recovery are ways to come in and get that residual out. Water is probably the most common globally to just flush it with water and push more out. So you can use steam, you can use carbon dioxide, you can even light a fire down there and get it to flow a little bit better with that. Although with that, there's no coming back to that reservoir after you've lit it on fire. So if you had anything that, in the future with new technology where you maybe could have gotten a little bit more of that residual oil, when you light it on fire, you're not coming back ever to that. Um, oh, and then unconventional natural gas resources. These are kind of new, I think, but like the methane hydrates, these are just like crystallized methane deposits that are found in the ocean and in the Arctic zones. Really cool and like huge amounts. What is that, 1,300 trillion cubic feet? Have been studied off the Carolina coast. We just don't really know how to tap into this reservoir, and I really don't know all that much about it other than it seems kind of cool. So, this was kind of supply and demand. So obviously there's a huge demand, the supply will run out. Also, there are environmental consequences of fossil fuels, but we're not, we didn't get there with this chapter. So what do we do if you're just looking at the economics of supply and demand? Um, you can try to conserve and just not use as much, and that will help. So here's just a list that they provide of things you can do. So, carpool, cities can build energy efficient mass transit systems, and the people, we need to use them. Increase fuel efficiency in automobiles. I think like the hybrid is a genius idea. Um, Improve insulin, plus it's cheaper. You just don't have to spend as much money on gas, or you get just a very high mile per gallon vehicle. Improve insulation in buildings and homes and schools, and you're not burning as much of that natural gas for heating. Um, and we can all increase the use of alternate energy methods, which are not, 100% environmentally friendly either. They also have their downsides if you're looking at just environmental issues. But if you're looking at a supply and demand, and if we start getting low in one supply, we do have the technology to get energy from other sources as well. And that is it for supply and demand.